Today on Bridges, we're going to talk about how sometimes it's just really important to take a deep breath and exhale. Welcome to Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter. I'm glad that you could join us today. Today I am joined by author Cheri Gregory. And Cheri, it's good to have you today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Monica.
So I love the book cover, Exhale, and tell me what made you write the book?
Oh boy, you know, we wrote the book that we needed for ourselves. We talk about our reader being awake at 2:37 in the morning, tossing and turning, and her list of things to do tomorrow. It's 2:37 in the morning, so it's actually today, and it's things she didn't get done yesterday, and she's wondering, why does life feel so heavy? Like she's got this pressure on her chest, and everything she's doing is good. She's not doing anything bad or wrong, but it just feels so meaningless.
Yeah. And it does sometimes, and sometimes the to-do list is this long, and it's never done. You know, that's the whole thing. There's always more on it. And you mentioned so I want to make sure we mention this right away. You co-authored this. Who is your co-author?
My co-author is Amy Carroll, who is also the co-host of the Grit and Grace podcast. And the book was actually born from our conversations on the podcast.
Yeah. I love Grit and Grace, because isn't that so what life is?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That is so what life is. So this book is written for the woman who's waking up at 2:37 a.m. How did you know that I do that? And I think about the to-do list, and it's longer than what I have time or the patience or whatever to do. And yet the book's title is Exhale.
Yeah. What we realized, and actually Amy's goal, the way it all started, was she gave me a phone call. She's like, Cheri, I've got this burden to write a book for women so they stop spending their lives on things that don't matter and start investing in their lives in things of eternal significance. And I was like, great idea, but if you start there, this woman who's awake at 2:37 in the morning and she loves Jesus and she wants to do what's right, she's going to go ahead and faithfully add that to her to-do list.
Right.
And then she's going to feel even more like a failure. And so that's where the subtitle came from, Lose Who You're Not, Love Who You Are, so that you can then live your one life well. And so that's part of the exhale, is to lose the things that we're doing that God didn't call us to do.
Right. And I think that's so hard for us as women. I don't know if it's hard for men or not, because I'm not one, but you know, you talk about lose who you're not, and there's a lot of things I look at and I think, you know, I need to lose that. I need to lose that thing, or I need to lose that activity, but yet I love Jesus, but I still feel stuck.
Yeah. You know, I hear so many women talk about, well, I just have to be all things to all people, and that is a scriptural phrase, but we've taken it out of context and we've kind of lost our minds with it. We don't have to be everything to everybody. In fact, some of the ways that I've done it, for example, I used to think I was a helper. And I'm a really good helper. Like, my husband was talking about being a problem solver, and I said, well, I am too. And he said, no, you're not. And I was so offended. And I thought about, well, why would he not see me as a problem solver? And I realized, oh, I'm actually not so much a problem solver, I'm a problem preventer. He doesn't see the work I do because my feelers are out so well. I'm like, solve that, pre-solve that, pre-solve that. And I thought that was helping. The Holy Spirit convicted me. There's another word for that. It's called meddling. And so, you know, you asked where the book came from. So much of this was us putting down on paper the journey that God's taken us on. Because yes, by all means, we're called to help. But when it crosses that line into meddling, you know, I spent about 2 months just immersed in the story of Rebecca from Genesis 25 through 27. And when I first got there, I was like, oh, I am so glad I have nothing in common with this woman. She is such a piece of work. And by the time I left, I'm like, oh, girlfriend, I so get you. So, yeah, there's just so much that starts well, that we take to an extreme. And that's what we need to lose.
Yeah. And how do we go about that process of recognizing that so that we can lose that?
You know, I like to use the phrase process through prayer. And so for each one of us, it's going to be something a little bit different based on our personality, based on the challenges that we have. You know, Amy, for example, is more of the classic perfectionist. And so part of what she's learning to recognize is when she's starting to really come down and everything has to be just right, she hears the voice of the Holy Spirit saying, some of this you can lose. Like, yes, we definitely want excellence. We're not saying just, throw up your hands and do nothing. But there is a difference between excellence and, we call it the C word, control. There is that point where we're taking over for God. We're saying we know better than He does. And I tend to be more the people pleaser. And so when I find myself shape-shifting out of fear instead of adapting to others in love, where if I'm adapting, I'm still myself. Shape-shifting, I'm lost, I'm gone. I'm being who they want me to be. Yeah. So.
And I know for a long time, I thought that was kind of the right way to relate to people. I didn't look at it as losing myself or giving away who I was. It was like, okay, well, if this is the way that I need to be with this group of people, or if this is how I need to be in that situation, then that's just what I do. So you call that process?
When I am just really throughout my day listening to the Holy Spirit speaking to me, that's processing through prayer and just literally asking. Sometimes if I'm alone and I don't have to worry about people thinking I'm talking to myself, I'll say it out loud. Lord, is this me loving on this person, or is this me trying to change and buy belonging?
Right. And I love that you call it process, and that because this is what I find, Cheri, as I want to help too much. I love it that's meddling. Like I do that too. I get all caught up in that. And then I'm so frustrated when people don't want my meddling, right?
And don't appreciate it.
Exactly. It's like, do you people not appreciate that I'm trying to meddle in your life? And they don't. So when I started praying about that, like sometimes what we imagine is that God is just going to give us like this formula of how to stop it, that I'm going to read a sentence in this book, Exhale, and it's just going to tell me how to handle every situation, but it is process. Yeah. It's like I'll pray and say, God, just show me when I'm meddling. Show me when I'm enabling. Show me when I've crossed the line from being helpful and I've tried to take control. And it'll just come in little small nudges.
Exactly.
Like, you just crossed the line. Monica, that's not helpful. And so I mention that only because that's what readers and viewers can know, is that it's usually not a formula of 1 + 2 = 3. It's process. It's throughout the day.
Well, in my life, that moment of recognizing I'm doing it, for me, that's a miracle, because I know I can't do that on my own. Like, I know there's some people who are really spiritually mature, and maybe they recognize that early on. I tend to be really, really late in the game, and so when it does show up and I recognize it, and this is where, in our conversations that led to this book, we realized that having each other made all the difference in the world, because we have earned each other's trust. I call her on her perfectionism and she calls me on my people pleasing. And so, like, my daughter just unexpectedly moved home. She's 28 years old, and so Amy is now holding me accountable to make sure that I'm not falling into meddling with her in very gentle ways that return me to God and return me to Scripture.
Right. And the Bible says that iron sharpens iron. And if we'll realize, in friendships and in relationships where we know people and we trust people, we need their objective feedback because we don't see ourselves like we are. There are sometimes when a friend will say something to me, and my first reaction, because I'm just a real slow learner. I'll just be really honest. Like, God pretty much has to hit me over the head several times, and I'm like, oh. And I'm like that with my friends, too. They'll give me some feedback, and I think that's not true. That is not right. That is not what I'm doing. And then 6 hours later, oh, that's what I'm doing, right? So your co-author, Amy Carroll, is helping you maintain the right boundaries in your home now that you have an adult child there.
Yeah.
Is it working?
The number of times I've done the same thing where 6 hours later I'm like, Amy, I'm sorry I didn't receive that as graciously as I should have. You were right, I was less right. But it's wonderful to be able to say, hey, tomorrow we're going to have a hard conversation, or a conversation that could be hard. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to be tempted to wimp out. I'm going to be tempted to be conciliatory and hope that this will all magically work out on its own, which it hasn't done for 28 years. But maybe today is the day.
Right, it doesn't. We tell ourselves these lies. We don't
Yeah.
think of them as lies. And they cause a lot of stress. Like they cause us to be up at 2:37
Oh, yeah.
a.m.
They cause me to be holding my breath and clenching my fists on others' behalf.
Nothing goes away. Like just magically. Like I used to even bring that into my Christian faith and think, well, if I just pray hard enough, right, it'll go away. But not if that's within the realm of my responsibility to handle. So if it does require a tough conversation, I cannot pray it away. I've got to trust God and have that tough conversation.
You just said that in those exact words. But, as a result of knowing that Amy was praying for me and was going to check in on me,
Yes.
I did have some boundary conversations with my daughter, and knowing that regardless of how she responded, and hey, we have a great relationship.
I understand,
But
yeah.
she's also 28,
Right.
and I'm her mom. But knowing that success was going to be defined by obedience to what God was leading me to do, and knowing that Amy was going to be cheering me on and supporting me no matter what happened with my daughter, I was able to exhale.
Yeah, that's good, Cheri. That's good. So the name of the book is Exhale, and it is co-authored by Amy Carroll and Cheri Gregory. And Cheri is here with me talking about this book today. Exhale is a part of each chapter. Tell us about that.
Well, part of it was we know that many books, in fact, both of us have written prior books where we ended with these checklists and bullet points and 10 steps, and we realized for the woman who's awake at 2:37, one is enough. Just one thing to do, one simple action. So, for example, in one of the chapters, we talk about just noticing throughout every day for about a week when you apologize. And then process whether it was an appropriate apology or a faux apology, a false apology.
I love that.
Because what I was convicted as we were working on this was that I apologize when I don't need to, even for like walking into the wall.
Sorry.
But then I kind of feel like I've filled my quota for apologies, and I don't
And you're done.
apologize when I've actually done something that's hurt someone, and like I don't apologize to my husband. So
That's so important. We've
Yeah.
got to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about those faux apologies and other good stuff from the book Exhale.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.
Don't miss another episode of Bridges. Subscribe to our YouTube channel today, where you can find all of Monica's latest teachings and interviews. It's easy to do. Just visit youtube.com, search Monica Schmelter, and click subscribe. Once you are subscribed, click the bell icon to get notified when a new episode is available to view. Thanks for watching Bridges.
If you're just joining me today on Bridges, I am talking to author Cheri Gregory about one of her books, Exhale, that she has co-written with Amy Carroll. And Cheri, I know that you also have a podcast called, is it Grit and Grace?
Grit and Grace. Good
I
girls
just
breaking
love
bad
that.
rules.
I love that. So we were, before the break, talking about what you've termed faux apologies, and that's when we say sorry when really we've done nothing wrong.
Actually, absolutely. And we as women, this came from an experience I had several years ago where I realized that I had given way too much authority to people in my life, many of them who don't count. People who may not even know me. I was sharing with you that Amy Carroll is one of my accountability partners. Well, we've done a lot of life together. And so she has like standing permission to speak into my life. And I pretty much have to listen to her, even if I don't feel like it. But my natural tendency is to listen to the critics on Facebook or on Amazon, people who don't know me, will never meet me. And when they say something, I give them all of this authority. And so, and I feel like apologizing to them. Like I've had Amazon reviews where I'm like, if only I could find their email address and I would send them their money back personally, I feel so bad for them, for letting them down. And so one of the things that Amy and I talk about in the book is I came to a realization that I need to literally, intentionally disappoint people. And now, disappointing people is like the great fear of my life. But what God really impressed on me is that because I had appointed people to have too much power, I need to then take that back, take that authority away from them. And literally, so let's say it's a bad review, or I'm a high school English teacher, so maybe it's a student who's giving me the look for the day. I need to, now this is internal, I'm not saying this out loud, but internally, I need to be able to look at them and go, I disappoint you today. You don't have power over me.
Right.
Your bad mood today isn't going to change who I am or how I walk about in the world. Now, I may imagine going around going, I disappoint you, but I don't actually do it. And when it first came to me, I was about to speak at a women's retreat. And so I literally, on Sunday morning, I challenged the women to all go home and disappoint the people in their life. I said, now, just a second. I'm not telling you to fail to feed them food or cancel the plans you've made. It's not that kind of disappointment. But it's to say, wow, the only true authority in my life is God.
Right.
And anybody else who's gotten more than that, I must consciously and intentionally disappoint.
Yeah, because living for an audience of more than one, being God, is like one way, surefire way to stress ourselves out, to make ourselves disappointed.
Yeah.
And there's no way that we can please everybody, and conceptually we know that, but in practical life, I don't always know that. So we might really be related, I don't know. I love that, just internally being able to just say, I disappoint you. In other words, I'm not gonna allow your opinion of who I am or what I do to just control my world, because that's what it is. Then all of these people have control over us. But you said something also so interesting before the break, that you do so much faux apologies that sometimes when I'm sorry really counts, you might not do that because you've already said enough sorry.
I was kind of hoping that would just slide by, that you wouldn't have picked up on that at all. Yeah, and that's where this really strange combination, especially for those of us who are recovering perfectionists, is, I end up with this horror that I've done something to hurt somebody, and so that's kind of a shame.
Right.
And at the same time, I have so much pride, like, no, I'm not the kind of person who would ever do that. So if I can just find a way to never apologize, then it must mean I've never
didn't
actually
do
done
it.
anything
Right.
wrong. Because the worst, being wrong is the worst thing in the world. And, one of the things, again, that God has taught me through friendships, through His Word, is that, no, being wrong is not the worst thing in the world. Being separated from Him is the worst thing in the world.
Amen. And being wrong and not having the freedom to admit it is absolute bondage for our lives.
Yeah.
And I can think about so many times that I resisted saying I'm sorry and apologizing because I didn't want to say that I was wrong. And I had all kinds of fears about that. Well, they won't like me anymore. They won't respect me. We won't have a good, And it's like, I'm already not apologizing. It's just so ridiculous, the things that we hold inside and that allow us to be anxious, but we have to talk about them. We have to read about them in order to really get to that place where we lose who we're not.
Absolutely. Well, and I was going through the story of Christ walking on water and inviting Peter out to join Him, and I realized those of us who struggle with perfectionism, what do we focus on in that story? We focus on, he sunk. He sank in the water. He got out of the boat and then he failed. And we focus on the failure. And the more I spent time with that, I realized, well, first of all, he, out of the 12, he just wanted to go to Christ.
He was the only one that even dared to get out of the boat.
And then I thought, and there's a beautiful painting that someone has done of Peter's perspective looking up from under the water at Christ reaching his hand down to him. And I'm like, what must have that felt like?
Yes.
To feel Christ's powerful grip lifting him out.
Yes.
And he knows what that feels like.
Yeah.
And the other 11 are safe in the boat. They didn't do anything wrong.
That's right.
But they also didn't know that Christ rescues before he reprimands. And some of us do that in the other direction.
way.
Just saying,
The other way.
maybe I do that.
Yeah, and I might do that too. I thought, after I rethought the story of Peter there, he was he was also the only one. He stepped out of the boat, but when he was failing and drowning and all of that, he got to feel the touch of Christ. Yeah. He got to experience the power of His presence in that storm. And there's something really wonderful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter always, his first response was
I love
always,
Peter.
get to Jesus, get to Jesus, get to Jesus.
I love Peter, and I relate to his big mouth. The book title again is Exhale, and it is co-authored by Amy Carroll and Cheri Gregory. And Cheri is here with us today on Bridges talking about this. So we talked a little bit about Lose Who You're Not, but the second subtitle, Love Who You Are.
I know.
Seriously, Cheri, seriously?
I know. And, let's just be really clear. We're not talking about pride or self-aggrandizement. We're saying God made you the way you are. And Amy and I both have done this when we've been speaking to groups of women. If we were to tell women, turn to your neighbor and share one thing that you're really good at, you probably can predict what would happen. The room would be dead silent.
Yeah.
Like they would all shift in their seats. Now if we said, get out a piece of paper and make a list of your weaknesses, they'd want more paper,
My
they'd
pen
run out
would
of
break,
ink.
yeah.
Exactly. And we just feel like God created us, He loves us, and when we're so busy focusing on our weaknesses and the things we can't do and wishing we were somebody else, it's just got to break His heart.
Yeah, yeah. And it leaves us stuck.
Yeah.
We really can't move forward. We've got all that going on in our head and heart about our weaknesses and what we don't like about ourselves. And I think how sad it is that we couldn't write down something that we're good at or an attribute that we really love about ourselves, because everything good that's in us, every good and perfect gift came from Him.
Absolutely.
So again, we're not talking about pride or being ridiculous or conceited, but just about appreciating who God made us to be. I think that's very important to loving who we are.
Well, it also allows us to learn the very humble task of learning to ask for help. Because if I love who I am, and it's a fairly small set of skills, well, then I need you, and I need a team.
Yeah.
I can't be all things to all people because God didn't create me to be able to do everything, and so it makes me reliant on a team, and the body of Christ.
Yeah, it's what creates community in our lives, to be able to know what He's called us to do, what we're good at, what our weaknesses and limitations are, and how we can get that from other members of the body of Christ and share in relationship. And that's where our lives really get fulfilled. So what about this live your one life well?
Yeah, that's really where the whole book is going, is that once you've lost who you're not and you love who you are, then you've got focus, and then you can be who God created you to be. And one of the things we talk about in the last section is to learn to look for the need with your name on it. And I share a story in there about being at a women's retreat, and I had gotten there early, and I went down to the kitchen, and one of the kitchen workers, her name was Colleen. We have her permission to use her story in the book. And, she was just sharing with me, and I noticed some pictures on the wall and asked her some questions. And the next thing I know, she's making me a sandwich and sharing with me how she lost her adult daughter only 4 months prior. And I almost started hyperventilating, Monica, because I am not a grief counselor. Like, I am the last person. You call me to go to get Starbucks for you while someone who knows how to cry with you cries with you. And so I did my best to listen and ask questions, and then finally I was done, and I started to go back to my room. And let me tell you, the enemy just started yelling at me, like, who do you think you are? You should have prayed over her. You should have spoken the name of Jesus over her. Who do you think you are to speak to women this weekend? And the only thing I thought was, I need to order her a copy of Tear Soup, which is a book that I had discovered when we had a death in the family. And I knew it was a powerful book. And I'm sitting here thinking, any other good Christian speaker would have done all these other things, and all I can think of is to buy her a book on Amazon. And so I literally ran, because I was in that stage where I was like, the Holy Spirit speaks to me. In the past, I had always talked myself out of it because I feel like I have mixed motives. But I was like, I ran back to my room, I got on the internet, I ordered the book. I figured out her name and her address and everything. Well, it was a 2-weekend retreat, and so the next weekend I came back. And I almost avoided the kitchen altogether. I felt so bad. I was like, that was the dumbest thing on earth. I don't belong here. I just need to quit speaking altogether. But when I went to the cafeteria, she came out and she put this bear hug. And she had an envelope in her hand, and she said, read this when you get back to your room. And it was a 3-page typed letter in which she spilled out that the one thing that her and her daughter had loved to do together, they loved to cook, and their favorite thing to cook was soup.
Oh.
And she went on to describe what the experience of reading that book was like, and that she said that I had given her permission to grieve for the first time. Everybody else had told her she needed to move beyond. Now, I know it wasn't me.
Right.
I was the last person on earth. But as I reflected on it, I realized, oh, I had been asking, why would God send me? I thought she needed anybody but me. And then I realized, no, he sent me because she needed me. She needed the one thing I could offer, which was this book. And that was the beginning of realizing, you know, I'm going to quit second guessing. I'm going to quit listening to all the stories going on in my head and trust that when the Holy Spirit moves, that's a need with my name on it.
Yeah, and that's how we live our one life well.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming today. It's been so good to talk with
Oh,
you.
thanks for having me.
Stay tuned. Monica will be right back with closing comments.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
Log on to www.ctntv.org, where you can make a prayer request, view our program guide, see who's on Bridges, or even watch one of Monica's latest teachings. Log on to www.ctntv.org.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
God really is your other half. God, He's the only person who can really, fill those holes and cracks in your heart that you're so wanting someone to fill.
It's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
Today on Bridges, we talked about the importance of just taking a deep breath and letting it all out and giving that exhale and let go of undue concern, of being overly responsible, perfectionistic, all of those tendencies that we can find in ourselves because we want to do something good. And instead of all of that, let go of who you're not and really love who you are. And I love that Cheri talked about today that the way to live your one life well is to find the need with your name on it. There are needs everywhere in this world, and we can't meet all of them. But there are needs that have our name on it, needs where God has empowered us and will lead us to meet those needs. And as you do that, I pray that you will not second guess yourself. We've all had the situation where we pray for someone or share Christ with them and think, I should have said this, I should have done that. And if there are things you can learn from those experiences, great. But trust that God, by His Holy Spirit, is leading you and guiding you to say what is good, what's right, and more necessary. We are out of time today on Bridges, so goodbye and God bless you.